Welcome to Catalyst, a program about people, ideas, issues, and conversations around them.
Welcome to Catalyst. Today's show is a cooperative effort between RETN and the Radiator 105.9 FM in Burlington. I'm Shelagh Shapiro, host of a Radiator program called Write the Book. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Julia Alvarez about her new book, A Wedding in Haiti, published by Algonquin. Julia Alvarez is the author of 19 books, including How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents, In the Time of the Butterflies, Something to Declare, and A Cafecito Story. She's a writer-in-residence at Middlebury College, and she and her husband, the ophthalmologist Bill Eichner, established and now oversee Alta Gracia, an organic coffee farm and literacy arts center in Julia's homeland of the Dominican Republic. A Wedding in Haiti takes place between the Dominican Republic, the United States, and Haiti, where Julia and Bill traveled twice between 2009 and 2010. The first time they traveled there for a wedding, and the second time in support of Haitian friends following the earthquake of January 2010. So thank you so much for being here, Julia.
Thank you for having me.
I wonder if we can start by discussing a line from the book. You write, "Haiti is like a sister I've never gotten to know."
Well, we are two little countries on one island, and you'd think that we would know each other. You know, we're sharing a small landmass, but it's like many troubled borders. It's been a very difficult history between the two countries, and you know, going way back when the French. When the new Haitian nation were fighting the French and came over and occupied the Spanish side, and then later in 1937, when the dictator Trujillo ordered the murder of all Haitians living on the Dominican side of the border, and in the course of 9 days or so, anywhere the figures vary wildly, anywhere between 4,000 and 40,000 Haitians were killed. And this year will be the 75th anniversary, and it's been, you know, one of those genocides never acknowledged, never fully faced, and it's, you know, the bad blood continues. Mm-hmm. So when I was growing up, I was told, you know, if I didn't get to sleep, if I didn't finish what was on my plate, the Haitian cuco was going to come and take me.
Oh my.
And they would take me to Haiti, where they ate little skinny Dominican girls. Go figure.
Oh my.
But you know, what it did for me, I love stories even back then, is that it made me even more curious. I wanted to stay up and see what this fellow was like. But it is that ingrained in the culture, that mistrust of each other.
Right. The one and the other.
Right, right. And so yeah, it's right there, right across the border. As close as going, I guess, you know, up to Canada from Santiago, where my parents are based, and I, you know, had never been there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got to know Haiti much better in recent years, partly due to your friendship with a young man named Piti.
Right.
I'm wondering if you can read a little something from the book that introduces us, or just talk about and read about Piti.
Well, the first scene in the book is about meeting him, and you know, a little exchange that happens, and then talking about a friendship began. Every trip I sought him out, brought him a shirt, a pair of jeans, a bag in which to cart his belongings back and forth on his periodic and dangerous crossings of the border. What I felt toward the boy was unaccountably maternal. Somewhere in Haiti, a mother had sent her young son to the wealthier neighbor country to help the impoverished family. Maybe this very moment she was praying that her boy be safe, earn good money, encounter kind people. Every time I spotted the grinning boy with worried eyes, I felt the pressure of that mother's prayer in my own eyes. Tears would spring up and a big feeling fill my heart. Who knows why we fall in love with people who are nothing to us? So, you know, this is a young Haitian that I meet because, as happens with a lot of the Mexican migrant workers who cross the border to try to earn a living at the wealthier neighbor country, we're two poor little countries on one island, but the Dominican Republic is a lot better off than Haiti. So there's a huge migration because it's the easiest one. There's also the migration to the United States, the migration to the capital, Port-au-Prince. Why so many families that weren't from the capital had family members there and lost someone with the earthquake, because that's the other side where there are some jobs. But many cross the border. And just as we say, you know, there's a film, A Day Without a Mexican, about what would happen if all the Mexicans were deported to the infrastructure in the United States. The same is true of the Dominican Republic, especially in agriculture, construction, service industries. So Piti had crossed the border to come work up in the coffee growing area. And that's how we met him, because of the coffee. Well, first we met him on the road, and then later he came to work at the farm.
And how old was he when you first met him?
Well, I thought, Bill and I have had this ongoing argument until I saw the documentation. He was 17 when he crossed the border. We met him soon thereafter, but he looked 14.
Okay.
And that's why his nickname is Piti, which is in Creole means the little one.
Right.
And he looked like he was 14 years old.
Yeah. Now, how long ago was that?
That was in 2001, or 2001. So he's about 27 now.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And through the years, as you got to know him better, one of the things that happened was that you would talk about how you were someday going to come to his wedding.
Well, I get in trouble through the storytelling. He was up at the farm one night, and when we're there, everybody comes because, you know, it's a kind of open table. Everybody's going to get a meal, and afterwards we play music. He learned how to play a guitar that a volunteer brought down and started a band. Like every young kid in the world, he wants to be a rock star. So he would sing, and we would all sing along. And one night, he just didn't want to sing. He seemed very down, and I knew he was homesick. And I said, Piti, you know, trying to cheer him up with a story. I said, Piti, I see your future. You're going to meet the love of your life, a beautiful young Haitian girl, and you're going to marry her and have a family. And he just looked at me like I was crazy, because where was he going to meet a nice Haitian girl in the mountains of the Dominican Republic in an all-male work crew?
Sure.
And so he just, you know, just shook his head. I said, no, Piti, it's going to happen. I see it, and you know what? I'm going to be the godmother of the wedding, and I'm going to be there. So, you know, you make this grand promise, and you forget it. 8 years later, fast forward, we got a call in Vermont saying, I'm getting married in a week. Madrina, godmother, are you coming?
Thanks for all the notice.
Yeah, well, I had a conference I was supposed to go to, all these things, you know, that I just said, Piti, I'm sorry, you had to give me more warning. I'm sorry, you know, can't be there. Hang up, and it's the pebble in my shoe. You know, I started thinking, this kid, so many people have failed him, including the situation into which he was born. You know, life has failed him. Every kid should have some opportunity, and he hasn't. And are you going to be one on that list of the people who fails Piti? So, you know, people think, oh, you're so good. I go kicking and screaming into all my good deeds. I resist till the last minute. And I thought, I've got to do it. So we decided, yep, we're going. And, you know, at that point, I just thought, you know, you cross the border, you pay a few fees. And I imagined the straight highway to a cathedral. I brought my summer wedding outfit that I wear to weddings, a long fluffy skirt and a little camisole. And I thought, well, you know, the hard part was just deciding to go. From now on, it's easy.
One thing that I loved in the book that's along those same lines is you call him to get the address,
right,
so that you can go to the wedding.
I know.
And he says, what's the exact? He says, an address, it's not possible that way.
Yes.
I loved that line, but I also wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about why is it not possible that way?
Well, you know, you Google and it's not even on the Google map, you know, there are lines in the Google map where there are no roads because the last hurricane washed them out or because the infrastructure hasn't kept them up and there's been a landslide. And none of this, you know, do you know ahead of time? So you have to continually problem solve. And we had to, it was 12 hours going down and going over and then having to turn around and go, you know, that kind of a trip.
Sure.
Clear across to northwest Haiti, then fording a river where there was no bridge. And later when there was a rainstorm, it became a problem getting back. And then opening what was just a footpath through with a pickup, just driving on it, about 45 minutes to Charlie's house, then about a 30-minute drive to where the wedding was going to be, so we thought, but that's where you park the pickup and you go 45 minutes hiking up and down a stony mountainside. And at first, when I heard what was ahead, I thought, well, I'm going to wear my hiking boot, what I had on, my hiking boots, my T-shirt, my jeans, and then I thought, the hell with that. You know, I've come to this wedding, I'm going to dress in style. So I don't know why I didn't break my neck, because I had a long fluffy skirt, little sandal, heels. And
oh my goodness.
Going up and down.
You didn't change the shoes even for the hike?
No, because, you know, they said, well, it's just, you know, that's the other thing. People live this way, it's no big deal to them.
Right,
you know,
right.
It was just, it's just a little ways. Well, a little ways became one of those flexible phrases that I learned to beware of, but at that point I wasn't, you know, I wasn't cautious about it. When they say it's just a little ways, no, it's not steep. Well, it was, at one point I just took the sandals off and went barefoot. Yeah.
One of the things I really enjoyed about the book was reading about the generosity with which you were met by Piti's family and friends and townspeople. There's this one scene where, in order for you and your group to have beds, they all sleep on mats outside on the ground under the stars, but you didn't know it until the next morning.
Right.
So I just wonder if you can talk a little bit about the hospitality and the welcoming.
You know what? This is the phrase that came to mind as I kept hearing after the earthquake, this impoverished nation, the, you know, poorest nation in this hemisphere, this failed nation, this pariah state, Haiti, nothing works. What I kept thinking of is how come people don't know about how rich Haiti is in values that I think many of us in our first world countries have forgotten, you know, in our race to success and progress and all those things. There were certain values that I kept thinking it behooves us to learn from Haiti, because we're going to need just those values to survive on a planet of slowly dwindling resources. How to live with nothing. You know, they have no infrastructure. You know, they have not everything. Talk about recycling. You don't need a program. Everything gets recycled. You know, how to take care of each other. Solidarity. As you said, you know, they had 3 beds on which 12 people slept. You know. Talk about learning how to do the math, you know, how to position everybody on a bed.
Yeah.
And when they offered the 3 of, well, our volunteer, Bill and myself, and a Dominican friend that had come along, when they offered us the 3 beds, I said, well, where are you going to sleep? They said, oh, there's plenty of room. Well, I thought, you know, they'd go to neighbors' houses or there was a back guest house. I didn't know. When I woke up and peeked outside, they had laid their mats under, you know, as you say, under the stars, and that's where they were all sleeping.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, you know, you have nothing, but you share what you have. And so, you know, when that earthquake happened, I thought this is a Haiti, not to minimize the problems in Haiti, the poverty in Haiti, the disaster that the earthquake was, but that there was a Haiti with a huge soul and certain values and just a richness of culture and oral tradition that nobody was talking about. And that's the Haiti that I had experienced when I went to Piti's wedding.
Mm-hmm. So, and you went to the wedding, and then after the earthquake, you decided to go back.
Right, right.
In order to to bear witness to what had happened there, but also to see how he and his family were doing, to help him see how everybody was.
Right.
So how was the return?
Well, Piti and Eslina were already living in the Dominican Republic.
Eslina being his wife.
His wife,
yes.
And their little baby. And after the earthquake, they were beside themselves because they didn't know what had happened with their families. And Eslina got very ill. And there was no, doctor's visits, there were medications, she just wasn't getting better. And Piti was beside himself with worry. And finally he said, the only thing that's going to work is to go home. And he was right. And so we thought, well, we can just give them money and send them, they'll find their way across the border with smugglers, whatever. And we thought, well, we're the godparents of this couple. There are certain requirements with this privilege.
Sure.
And so we decided we would go back with them. And it was quite a trip. Again, we were a little more prepared because we knew what we were in for to get to their house. But as you know from the book, there's a huge rainstorm and we can't cross the river back once we're there.
That was an extraordinary story. Yeah. That whole thing with the truck.
Right.
I just couldn't believe that was happening.
I was going to get there, and there was a small earthquake. It just seemed like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
And then we went down, of course, into Port-au-Prince, and it was 6 months after the earthquake, but the tent cities and the devastation and just the experience of being there after us. One young Haitian woman said on a YouTube video that was made while the earthquake was going on, she said, it's the end of the world, it's the end of the world. And it did feel like a visit after the end of the world to a place that had just collapsed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You went to Port-au-Prince.
Right.
During that trip. And there's a scene in the book where you recount being in a breakfast place and you meet a gentleman who speaks English, Junior, you call him.
Right.
And I loved this. He sort of assumed that you were aid workers or something, and you said, we're really here just to see. And you said it with a little bit of conflict in your heart. And he said, well, it needs to be seen. And I loved that. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah.
It made me think from a writer's perspective about the importance of telling stories and sharing that with a larger audience. So I wonder if you can talk about that and your motivation for writing A Wedding in Haiti.
Well, it was an amazing phrase when he said Haiti needs to be seen. And I thought, yeah, there's so many lenses that we have in the way we see countries like Haiti, in the ways we see each other, because I think this is also a book about seeing. And, people say, you're writing about a wedding in Haiti and there's these huge problems, gosh, and I quote the little haiku by Issa, the Japanese poet, and he has a haiku where he says, I look in the dragonfly's eye and I see the mountains over my shoulder. That sometimes it's through the little specific detail that you really see the bigger issues. And also the big problems that need to be solved, sometimes the way they're solved is, first of all, by seeing as accurately as you can, seeing with the eyes of love, seeing with compassion, and just one-on-one. This is how it gets built. And so I didn't plan when I went to the wedding that this was I had put aside my writing project to go on this trip, grumbling that I was doing this. And I wasn't planning to write a book about it. And it stayed so much in my head after that first trip that every once in a while I was writing things out based on my journal, which was mostly just details jotted down without coherence, going back to it, thinking about it, talking with Bill about it. And I thought maybe there's something here. And then the earthquake happens. And it was my way of sort of being with Haiti and the other Haiti than the disaster Haiti, that I was hearing about, almost like lighting a little candle of hope, because there was also this Haiti, and I knew it was there. And I knew it was there when I was watching some clip on television of this woman that was dug out of the rubble after 3 days. You know, she was all white with dust, and things were broken, and you imagine that she had been terrified and that she was in pain. And they pulled her out, and she was singing.
Oh, yeah, right.
She was singing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought, whoa, Haiti, you know, you're coming back when there's this resilience in the people.
Yeah.
And so it was an amazing moment. And that's when I said, I've got to tell this story.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, part of telling the story is also telling a little bit of your own story.
Right.
There's a line in the book that's about your husband. Anything I come up with, Bill takes it and runs with it. It's how my writing an article about small endangered coffee farms morphed into our owning one, which is great. So I was wondering if you could describe the difference, if there is any, of writing about the family you're born with versus writing about the family that you choose.
Well, as you know from this, from the book, I do write about both. I mean, I write about the family that we've chosen in getting involved with Biti and Esleen and their little baby Ludi, who are now part of, you know,
Right.
God, children, part of our family. I write about my parents, elderly parents, and because there are many love stories. There's the obvious one about Biti and Esleen, but there's the one of my parents and their love story, and the serendipity of how they met in 1947 in New York City, of all places, even though they came from the same small town in the Dominican Republic. So there's that story. And then the story of a mature, sometimes an immature, mature relationship between Bill and myself. So there's that love story as well. And, you know, I write moved by the story and where it takes me. And I think the difficulties come later when I then think, you know, how are people going to respond to this, you know? And Bill read everything along the way, and he's thank goodness, he's a very confident and big-hearted man. I said, well, what about, you know, the scenes where you sort of don't act very nice, and they're in there, but then the scenes where I don't act very nice are in there too. He says, that's just being a human being. And I'm just floored by that he's so ready to be seen.
Absolutely.
To be seen in all his complexity, because to see only the positive things is not to be seen. It's to be, you know, it's to be boxed in a little narrow, flat description, which isn't who you are.
Right.
And so, so the difficulties come later where I worry, you know, oh dear, you know, especially because this is nonfiction. You know, when I'm writing How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents, even though there's many autobiographical elements, you know, family gives me a hard time. I said, but it's fiction.
Right, nobody knows what's real. Nobody knows for sure.
That didn't stop them from giving me a hard time. But at least I have that, you know, because it's true, you know, you've changed things, and things are malleable, and you fit what is needed in the story. But in nonfiction, there are certain fixed points. You're still making fictional choices. I mean, you know, strategies, what to leave out, what to put in.
And how to reproduce a conversation in dialogue.
How to reproduce a conversation, you know, what angle, what, you know, all of those things. So, you know, I say that even the truth is the story we tell ourselves about what really happened. Because even history, depending on where you are experiencing it, you have a certain perspective, and you're seeing it through your character.
Right.
Even the history you live.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's always
well, even telling the story of sitting in this room together, you know, I'll be able to tell you what was happening behind you, and you'll be able to tell me what's happening behind you.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. I wanted to ask about your plans to return to Haiti. You mentioned that there is an event that's happening in sort of memorial of the
the massacre.
Of the massacre, right.
Well, again, stories getting me in trouble. When I was traveling and talking about the Haitian massacre at one event in New York City and Washington Heights, full of Dominican-Americans, and some Haitian Americans were there as well because they got involved in this conversation. I mentioned that one of my dreams is to have some sort of commemoration on the anniversary in October, when the Haitian massacre happened. You know, to have people gather together and sing and poetry and dance as a way to really, give witness, testimony to what happened, but also to say, we the people want to move beyond that because the governments keep, they have their own agendas. And so I mentioned this at one of the readings, saying that, it's always been a dream, but it's such a colossal enterprise with, organizing it, and you need an office, and you need someone to write the grants and funds, forgetting that the young people have all this technology whereby they put it out on Facebook, they Twitter, they create websites. And so these young people in the audience got going. I said, I want it to be a border of lights. So it's called, there's going to be a website, borderoflights.org.
Yes.
And they're already coming together. And it's going to happen this October 5th and 6th, which is right smack in the middle of the 9 days when the massacre happened. And it's the 75th anniversary of the massacre.
Okay.
So it's going to be quite an event, and I'm going to be there.
Wow.
Just like I told PT.
That's a wonderful thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll be amazing.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful because I think what happens is all of our little countries, there's this huge diaspora to this country, and we come here and we come together here.
Right.
As the marginal people, as the outsiders and immigrants, we make friends with each other. Then we take that mentality back home.
Yes.
And we shift the ground. The
Yes.
dialogue changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Julia, I wanted to ask you about a comment that a friend of yours made after traveling to Brazil. And you mentioned this in the book. She expressed something that you felt about going to Haiti, that it stays with you, that I think she said it stops you in your tracks. And then she said, what then is the obligation?
Right.
Which was very powerful. And I'm wondering if you can talk about your feelings on that.
Well, she had gone to Brazil, and she said, because I was telling her about Haiti, she said, when we have seen a thing, what then is the obligation? And we're back to seeing. Once you see clearly, and you've seen something that moves you and touches you because you've seen past the lenses, you've been at the heart of it, what then is your obligation? And it's a big question. It's a very 21st century question, because with our access to so much information, where we can be right there and see what's happening in Syria. I mean, we can see the tornado come and take the house away, and we can see people jumping out of buildings because the Twin Towers are coming down. We see these things, and what then is the obligation? And it just haunted me, that phrase, and I don't pretend to answer it at all, because one of the writing instructions that I love is from Chekhov, where he says the task of the writer is not to solve the problem, but to state it correctly. In other words, to see it and accurately have the reader see it. You don't have to solve it. In fact, if you solve it, then you start narrowing it down and giving an agenda, a cookie cutter, your agenda, your solution, and you don't liberate the reader
to take away
and translate it into their own ways to solve the problem.
Sure.
So yeah, that phrase. And it's funny, people, didn't there used to be like some TV show or radio show, people say the darndest things or something like that?
Wasn't that Art Linkletter?
Oh,
kids. I think kids say the darndest things.
People say the darndest things.
Yes, true.
bumper stickers. I have this whole little notebook where I jot down the wonderful bumper stickers that people come up with. Yesterday was time to Mother Earth. And I thought,
right.
That's really cool.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Moonlight in Vermont or Starve. That's the one I always remember.
That's great. So, these phrases sometimes become mantras in your head.
Yes.
When you're writing or when you're experiencing something.
Right, right. I wanted to ask you how PT is doing now.
Oh, PT is over the moon because, not because of the book, though it's really cool. He thinks to have a book about his wedding, and he's very excited about that. But I told you, every kid in the world wants to be a rock star, and he has this band. And Bill, who always takes it one step further, decided that if I could write a book about PT, he could produce a CD.
Right.
So he now has a CD, PT, and it's Lina, his wife, and PT's brother, Adner, and their friend, Eliana. Bill had them tape their music in Jarabacoa, and he brought it back, and with the help of my stepdaughter, who's an artist, Sarah Eichner, she designed the CD cover and the graphics and so forth. And I guess with some online company called Disc Makers, they have come out with a CD of PT's music. And as we've been on the book tour, Bill went with me on part of it, and he was peddling the CDs.
What's the name of the band?
They call themselves, what is it that they call them? The first song is Rise Up Brothers in it, and they call themselves the Rise Up Brothers. It's in Creole. I have to.
It's in Creole.
Yeah,
okay, sure.
But and I hesitate because the name has shifted so many times. Because I said, Rise Up Brothers, but two of you are females, So anyhow,
well, at the end of Write the Book, the show that I am going to, air our conversation on, I will play some of that music.
Some of that music. But anyhow, he's over the moon because Bill has sold 120 CDs, $10 a piece, and 100% of the proceeds go to PT and the band.
Wonderful.
So they just are very excited about that.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, before I forget, I want to ask you, who has influenced you as a writer? Who are some of your favorite authors or books?
Well, with this book, because it's a nonfiction book, when I do like to explore new genres, and when I do, I need to learn things because that's not my accustomed genre. And with this nonfiction book, I read a lot of nonfiction, and some favorites are Susan Orlean's, who is a wonderful writer, often in the New Yorker, wrote The Orchid Thief, wrote the biography of, what is it? Is it the biography, is it of Rin Tin Tin or I think it's Rin Tin Tin, the dog who plays Rin Tin Tin. She's wonderful. She's zany, she's funny, she's soulful. I love her work, so I read a lot of her work. I read an amazing book by Rory Stewart called Places in Between, about his walk across Afghanistan. He decided to walk across Afghanistan. And, it's not just an incredible project, but he's such a wonderful writer. Bruce Chadwin, the song lines about the Australian Aborigines, a wonderful, wonderful book. Let's see, I've been reading a lot also about aging because of my parents. So I read a wonderful little book by Diana Athill called Somewhere Towards the End. I read an excerpt, I think it was in the New York Times magazine, and I was very taken with it. Some of my, I guess, mentors, muses, well, you heard me mention Chekhov. I'm now very taken with writers who can write really powerful novels that are short. I just finished an astonishing novel by Julie Otsuka, The Buddha in the Attic.
Oh, yes, right.
That is a wonderful, wonderful little novel, 129 pages.
Oh.
I love Penelope Fitzgerald, The Blue Flower.
Okay.
I think that's under 200 pages. I'm a big fan of Harriet Dorr, who published her first novel in stories, Stones for Ibarra, when she was 73.
Oh, wow.
She is, you know, a wonderful major writer, died in 2002, I think, at 93 years old, and her reputation, which is sizable, consists of under 600 pages. She wrote 3 books, starting with the first one when she was 73, and they're wonderful books about an outsider, an American in Mexico, and beautifully.
And are you drawn to the sort of concision of language?
Yes.
And the getting the point across easily and smoothly without a lot of...
It's sort of like I love haikus.
Oh, yeah.
I really love haikus. Often when I do writing workshops, even if they're fiction writing workshops, I have the students do haikus as their finger exercises, taking each sense, take a little snapshot of this thing and that thing and that thing. And it's a way to just really pay attention, to see things,
Yes.
to see things. And so I think of short novels as the haiku novels. You know, they're able with really precise details, because when you read The Buddha in the Attic, it's just, I think it took her about 8 years to write. And the reading list at the end is almost, you know,
as long
longer
as the
than
book.
any chapter. And you see that she just read, and just really, it's the essence of a novel.
Sure.
And so I just admire it, and therefore I would love to be able to do that, because my sensibilities and, you know, my background is Latin, and so I love the Rococo, the florid, the Faulkner sentences, the many characters, the stories that branch into other stories. But so maybe it's just a case of admiring
The other.
the other. But I would love to try it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this book is not
that's true.
not overly long.
I know.
Yeah.
It's
a lovely.
yeah.
It's just a lovely little gem.
Maybe that's what got me started thinking, or
Yeah.
you know. So those are some of the reading that I've been doing lately that I think of as my teachers.
Yes.
You know. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. One thing I really admired about A Wedding in Haiti, anytime that you write a memoir, you know, you're exposing something of your own life as well as what other story you might be telling about the larger world. And I really admired your honesty about yourself and your relationship with your husband, as we talked about before. And one thing that you said in the book was that you used to lie. You used to find yourself telling little fibs without thinking too much about it,
Right.
and that it was a process for you to think about, like, I'm going to change this about
Right,
myself.
right.
So anyway, I loved that you were so honest about yourself in your book. It makes it a more trustworthy piece if you can read it and feel that the author is looking at themselves, himself, herself,
Seeing
more
yourself.
honestly. Yes.
Again, seeing.
Seeing,
You know,
right.
Czesław Miłosz has a wonderful poem, Love, that starts, if I don't mess up the lines, something like, to love means to learn to look at yourself the way one looks at distant things, for you are only one thing among many. And whoever sees this way heals his heart without knowing it from various ills. The bird and the tree say to him, friend. But that idea that, is to look at yourself. You know, see yourself the way one looks at distant things.
Yeah.
You're only one thing among many. And talking about the word memoir, when we were debating, the editor said, we need a subtitle. People are going to see this and they're going to think it's a novel because they're used to you as a novelist. And I said, and she said, how about the subtitle, a memoir? A Wedding in Haiti, a memoir. And I said, no, I don't like that, because this is not a memoir. It's not about just me. I said, let's call it an us-moir, a Wedding in Haiti, an us-moir, because it's about all of us. And she said, no one is going to buy a book in a genre that they don't know what it is. So we finally came up with a subtitle, The Story of a Friendship, which is in the title page and not on the cover because it was a late arrival. But again, you know, it's about us. And I think seeing ourselves as a we can be a very, salutary thing to do.
Yeah.
Not just as a me.
Yeah.
As a me.
Julia, I have one last question for you. Having written A Wedding in Haiti, I'm wondering if you have any advice for other writers who might be trying to write a narrative, maybe a personal narrative or not a personal narrative, either way, that takes place in another culture.
Wow. Well, again, I'm thinking of 2 books that I did mention, because, you know, when you're young and you can, and you're an undergraduate or you're in an MFA program, you have this kind of inbuilt mentoring and musing in your life. Later, if you're lucky, you have maybe some of the friends that you went to workshop with, whom you can exchange work with, or maybe you start a writing group. But your best teachers, I even tell this to undergraduate students, are those masters who are out there who have done it. And you can read the book and get inside of it as a writer and sense the texture and how it's done and the pacing. So I really think to be a writer, you have to be a reader. And when I'm working in a new genre, I do go back and find those books or ask people for recommendations of books and read a lot in that genre to figure out how it works. So for people that are setting out to write about journeys into other cultures, and I'd say that the most interesting journeys are the ones that aren't occurring just over a landscape. They're occurring also internally. And in the relationships. They are occurring on many levels. So I would say reading, even they're short stories, but they read like a memoir. Stones for Ibarra is a wonderful, wonderful book. The one I mentioned by Rory Stewart, The Places in Between, Bruce Chatwin. These are masters. And I think, you know, in order to write about that journey, you've obviously made that journey. Maybe you return to freshen up the details, but keeping a journal, even if it's a journal, the kind of journal I keep a lot of times on travel is sometimes lists, you know, just lists as I'm moving through the landscape, just things that I'm seeing. Or later when Bill and I stop and we're eating or resting, you know, going over it and having him tell me what he saw. And just keeping those things, because you think you're going to remember them, but it's like when you wake up at night with a perfect poem.
Right.
You think, oh, I'm so sleepy, I'm not going to forget
I'll
this. This is
remember
such a perfect poem. And the next day it's just gone, you know. So it does help to keep a journal as you travel.
Right.
Yep.
Write down those things that you see that you're not familiar with from home.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the juxtapositions of one thing and another coming together, and things like that. So it's, keeping journals. I mean, it's part of the research, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Julia, I want to thank you so much. Julia Alvarez, thank you so much for speaking with me today. This has been Catalyst. My guest on Catalyst has been Julia Alvarez, author of A Wedding in Haiti, published by Algonquin Books. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.